Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today we are going to be wrapping up 2016. And in my case, I'm going to be naming my 10 favorite books that I read this year. They do not necessarily have to have been written or released in 2016, but it's just what I have read, and I read quite a nice amount in this really sporadic and insane year at hand. This year I completed 32 books, plus some smaller works and other pieces of reading material, and I also dipped in and out of different books. I started some books. My goal is to finish them next year. Granted, Les Mis was on my TBR since the end of last year, and I did not get the opportunity to revisit it, but I plan to revisit it sometime in the near future. The way my list is going to go, I ranked everything that I read, and this is going to be the top 10. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1. Those are my favorite kind of lists, so I thought, why not do one for this channel? So let's begin. Number 10 on my list is Great French Short Stories, edited by Paul Negri and published by Dover Thrift, which means that it was not expensive at all. I got it for $3.50, which is quite a buy and a great opportunity to introduce yourself to great French writers without the commitment of an entire work. Through this text, I was introduced to the prose of Émile Zola. There's also a satire by Voltaire. There are works from Guy de Maupassant, one of which is The Necklace. There's Gustave Flaubert submitted something, and Prosper Mérimée also submitted something. There's so many other great writers in this collection, and I really think that Paul Negri did a great job putting together an accessible and not very costly anthology of French literature. For number 9, I have I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I read this earlier in the year, around April. Richard Matheson is remarkable. He and Ray Bradbury are the masters of speculative fiction. Bradbury's seems to lean a bit toward the science fiction realm, while Matheson leans a bit toward the horror realm. But I Am Legend has elements of everything. It follows Robert Neville, who is he's the last surviving human in an outbreak where the bacilli either killed or turned everyone into a vampire, zombie-like creature. And this is a pioneering work of zombie fiction, though the traits that they possess very much reflect the two. Unlike the film starring Will Smith, who was on the cover, this was released in order to tie in with the film. The original novel, Neville doesn't really have a background the way that Will Smith's character had in the film. He is just he's your average war veteran who is just looking to do what he needs to in order to survive. And while Neville in the movie has such a background that he comes in knowing what he needs to do in order to put together a cure, Neville in the book is just he needs to rely on research at the library. And I think that the Neville in the book is something that we can really relate to and put ourselves in his shoes. I think that I Am Legend is a must-read work and not too long of a work either if you are looking to get into speculative fiction as an overall genre. Number 8 on my list is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is actually the very first time that I read this. This is usually assigned reading at high school. In my case, it was not. So this is the first time that I came across this novel. This is the story of Jean Louise Finch, also known as Scout, her brother Jem, and their father Atticus, and how Atticus is defending a black man that is being accused of raping a young woman who's about 18 years of age, and her father is a piece of garbage. I'll put it to you that way. But this particular novel's greatest accomplishment is the fact that it is a clear reflection of the American South during that period of time, and how not much has changed with regard to the emotional disposition of what has happened, the events that have happened prior, and how there are acts of prejudice that are taking place around the world. They were even discussing Nazi Germany during current events and the parallels that could be made emotionally between that and things that were taking place where they were living. And it's just quite remarkable. It leaves you thinking, and there's this whole discussion that can take place about race and empathy, which it's, I think that this is a valuable work to include on the curriculum. I believe that the teachers should have their say as to what they feel should be included, but this is something that I would incorporate. For number 7, I have The Crucible by Arthur Miller. This is something that I first read during my junior year of high school, but I revisited this. I think that this is one of the most important works when it comes to understanding the idea of history repeating itself, and how there is this eternal idea that people have that mindset that they feel that they can play the role of God. You have the Salem witch trials that took place in the 1690s, where people were accusing others of witchcraft. You have the 1950s, where this was released in 1953, where Senator Joseph McCarthy was accusing people of practicing communism. And then you have something that overlooms all of it, where people feel that they have the right to accuse others of different things, and almost making it so, and almost just about damaging their reputation. Just in the case of The Crucible, you have a flawed but relatable protagonist in John Proctor. He's not the best when it comes to going to church on Sundays and being faithful to his wife or whomever he's married to, but he leaves everybody alone and does his thing, takes responsibility for his actions that he feels were clearly his actions. But you have three particular forces that feel that they have an authority over how things should operate. You have the religious authority in Reverends Paris and Hale, especially Paris. You have the judges feeling that they possess lawful authority in the Deputy Governor Danforth and Judge Hawthorne. And then you have the girls who feel that they are making a difference by exercising that duty that they feel they need to accuse others of witchcraft because they themselves were in contact with the devil, per se. And Abigail Williams, who is the main representative of these teenage girls, feeling that she herself has a great authority through her uncle, Reverend Paris. Through John Proctor, you have that idea that there is a such thing as that he clearly is a representation of common sense, even though he is even with his flaws. But then you have these really disclaimers that are that really throw curveballs and then make you think outside of the text, which, while there are historical inaccuracies that are either intended or unintended because they're trying to make a point as opposed to tell a historical story or tell about a moment in history, I think that this is it is able to accomplish exactly what it sets out to do. And I think that this play is very well written in how it is very fleshed out, and you have a great sense of emotion and the ability to discuss and debate each of the characters at hand. For number 6, I have A Time to Kill by John Grisham. John Grisham is somebody that I enjoyed reading prior to this. I've read The Brethren, The Innocent Man, and Playing for Pizza, and I thought I would visit his very first novel, A Time to Kill, and I did this as a buddy read with Lauren from Lauren in the Books. This is the story of Carl Lee Haley, who is a black man on trial because he killed 2 white men who raped his young daughter. And this novel explores very much racial tension in Mississippi in 1989 and how things really have not changed, especially with that ever-looming presence of the KKK. And John Grisham does an outstanding job exploring this issue and also giving you a great insight to the court system in general. And also the idea of whether or not, what really defines an insanity plea, and if what one would really be thinking if a child or any loved one of theirs was brutally hurt, and how this can really create a different sense of judgment of theirs, and whether or not that can be defined as a reason to deem one as being not guilty, which clearly Carl Lee Haley committed the crime, but whether or not he did it with a sound mind is definitely worth discussing. Number 5 on my list is Night by Elie Wiesel, the late Elie Wiesel. This is also the year that Harper Lee passed away. But this is a very poignant memoir that Weissel wrote about his experiences of being in the Holocaust as a young Jewish man who came from Hungary but was captured late into World War II, sent through Auschwitz and over to Buchenwald, seeing death straight in the eyes. He, his parents, his siblings, and this is a really raw and straightforward account of Weissel's, and he tells it the way that he feels a story like this is meant to be told, and just informing people exactly how it was. The thing that I really got out of this was the fact that the people that were operating the concentration camps were not the Nazis themselves, but they were fellow Jewish people and other individuals that Hitler deemed as undesirable, like gypsies. But the Nazis did have a presence, and they did, and their methods were just as brutal and disgusting as history says that they are. But it was really, I think this is something that people really do need to read and explore, because Weissel dedicated the rest of his life to not just tell his story, but also the story of those that never had the opportunity to tell their story about not making it out of, about being in the Holocaust, and in many cases not making it out. The top 4 books on my list were all 5 out of 5 reads. They all got 5 stars on my Goodreads. The others were 4.5. But number 4 on my list is a poetry collection called Sleepwalkers by Nicole Lehner Montez. And the poems in this book explore societal injustice, race, violence, and so many other things that really create a rough environment for those that have to endure such. One of my favorite poems that's in here is called Extra Naked. We discussed it on an episode of our show that has to do with what really is the difference between races aside from skin color. And going even deeper, why does it really matter, and why should it matter? And why does it matter in the structure of this society? Number 3 on my list, I read them as 2 separate chronicles, but I'm ranking them as one because I feel that it is the same exact story, and which it is. It's just one and then the continuation of the other. And that is the Complete Persepolis, which there is a Complete Persepolis book, but I read it as Persepolis and Persepolis 2. Very much very similar to the way that I read Mouse. Persepolis is a graphic memoir of Marjane Satrapi, who in the first book is growing up in Iran, where there is great political and international tension because Iran is constantly at war with other countries. In addition, their view on women is very low and inferior, to the point that they need to dress up in garb because they feel that presenting themselves as they are is a distraction to men, which the one great accomplishment that Marjane Satrapi does in these novels is provide a disposition that she sees herself like anybody else. She has great expectations, regardless of her point in life, whether it be for herself or for her future. She does, of course, come across hurdles, which includes in the second book where she moves to Austria to study in order to stay away from the intense lifestyle in Iran. But things don't work out and she moves back. But we get this great idea as to her very active life and how she made something of herself, even with the great struggles that she had endured. And I also learned a lot more about Iran and about other countries in the Middle East, and learned that people are people, and political situations are political situations, and wherever you go, there are bad people. The first Persepolis I read as a buddy read with Michelle from Michelle's Life. I liked it so much that I picked up Persepolis 2 and read it on my own. Number 2 on my list is A Strangeness in My Mind by Orhan Pamuk, which I also read as a buddy read with Michelle from Michelle's Life. And she wanted to read an International Man Booker nominee, and while The Vegetarian won the prize, A Strangeness in My Mind was a nominee, and I think it was rightfully so, because Orhan Pamuk does an outstanding job fleshing out a man's life in Turkey and make it accessible on a global level. At the very beginning of the book, there is a family tree which tells you just about everything that is bound to happen. But what's more interesting is finding out why. It's not the what that, to me, that matters. It's the why and the how. And the fact that we follow someone that sells boza and yogurt on the streets, and how this profession gradually becomes much more of a challenge to deal with through time, is a great reflection of this very rapid transition is really remarkable. And I really got something out of these very well fleshed out characters that I really possessed critical feelings for, all in different ways. I think that this is definitely a novel that people really need to check out, especially if they are looking to diversify with their reading and also learn so much more about another culture. Now we are at number 1 on my list of my favorite books that I read this year. And the number 1 book that I read was Damien by Hermann Hesse. Hermann Hesse, I have read Siddhartha and Narcissus and Goldmund. Both of the books I felt were good, but Damien is just outstanding. I feel that with this, I learned so much more about seeking enlightenment from within and the ability to trust your intuition, and how it is really crucial to find solace within yourself and within what you feel is right. It's that great idea of following your own path, and how the only person that can truly satisfy yourself and deem that you can be satisfied is yourself. And in this case, Emil Sinclair, who was he's a bit of an estranged teenager who is dealing with personal issues, family issues, issues with his peers and those he goes to school with, someone who's a psychological bully who is trying to play with his mind and lead him the wrong way. And then he comes across Max Damien, who is very much, he's someone that follows his own path and tells it just the way it's meant to be told, and gives Sinclair a completely different outlook in life. And this is something that he begins to develop into, and it's such a great learning experience. And I really think that this is something I would like to read over and over and really immerse myself as much as I can possibly immerse myself. Essa himself was a bit estranged, but eventually he was able to seek that intuitive enlightenment that really led him in a much better direction. And I feel that Damien is something that I did not want to zip through. It was something I wanted to take bit by bit, and I think that it really made for a remarkable experience. Some of the books that were on here I have already done reviews for, and I've also either conducted or plan to conduct discussions based off of them. Some of them I did not, but many of them I did. I'm going to leave links down below to some of the discussions, and I'm also going to leave links down below to any of the booktubers that I mentioned in this video. I had a really good reading year in 2016. It was I think I did break my record for most books that I made my way through in a year, and hopefully I can break my record next year in 2017. And I'm really looking forward to my reading expositions for that year. Thank you for tuning into this video and to our channel. I hope everybody on here has a happy, healthy, and safe New Year. And for now, and as always, I encourage you to keep reading.